Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. So we are entering perhaps the 3 busiest days in the history of the Ayn Rand Center UK, because today we have the beginning of the communication bootcamp with John Watkins, a communication expert, the best communication expert, in my opinion, in the wider objective sphere, and I would say perhaps even in the wider liberty movement sphere. Then Saturday, we have the beginning of the new Leonard Peikoff series. We're doing objectives through induction. And Sunday, we have another session of the Productivity Hub this week, discussing the famous book by Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, where also you get the Nikos extra treatment, which is a pamphlet that reviews the book, gives you only the essence, what you need, and also with some critique and reflective comments from an objectivist point of view. So all these things are only for members. So if you're not a member, today is the day to become one, because again, only for the value that you're going to get out of these 3 events, which are not a one-off event, by the way. We're going to have a productive communication bootcamp with Don every single week. So no matter if you want to give good public speaking or speak confidently in a party, be more successful even with the opposite sex, if this is what you're up to, being a good communicator helps. Anyway, enough with the introduction. So today we're discussing the issue of bullying. And actually one aspect of this issue, which is, could it be that the solution to this problem, which is older than time, and in some ways we've mostly saying, okay, there is no solution. It is what it is. Could it be, though, that the solution is, rather than find a solution at the level of a system, let's say, make sure that in this school there is no bullying, could the solution be that you actually teach people who are maybe going to be the victims of bullying to stand up for themselves and fight? So, and learn self-defense or learn a martial art. And I'm going to explain what's the context on this. So my co-host today is Mark. Mark has a whole program on bullying. Mostly it's on online bullying, if I'm right. Mark, so do you want to start by telling us what's your interest on the topic of bullying, and why is it important to you?
Well, with respect to online bullying, I've been a victim of successive waves of online bullying that don't just stop at, people calling you names and saying bad things about you, but perpetuating narratives about you with the intent of hurting you or taking you down. And so since that affects my career and my livelihood, my future, my relationships with friends and acquaintances, I wanted to do something about that. I wanted to find a way to make the atmosphere out there less toxic. At first, I applied the sort of playground rule, which applies to, the physical bully who has the guts to confront you in person. And I found that has the opposite effect in the cyber world, because you're not really dealing with people who have the guts to physically confront you and deal with the consequences. You're dealing with someone far more cowardly than that and far more sick on a lot of levels. And so you have to fight them differently. So I'm trying to come up with methods for individuals to deal with this type of behavior, since it's always been with us, but it's becoming more predominant as our culture gets into more radical skepticism and tribalism. We're going to see more of this, violence.
So you mentioned the playground bully, and today the focus is mostly going to be on that aspect. But there are similarities, which is that someone bullying you can have a very negative effect on your life. So where I got the idea is that some people from the Gracie family, and if you don't know the Gracie family, it's the most famous family perhaps in the history of martial arts. It's the family that made Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu a famous thing. It's the family that brought Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to the United States, and it's the family that kickstarted the UFC tournament, and the family that dominated the first UFCs, basically making the case that Jiu-Jitsu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, is the most efficient martial art. Now, where does bullying come in? One part of this family, Hiron and Henner Gracie, they have a program which is called Anti-Bullying Program. And I've put a video on the chat, on the live chat. So basically what they do is they find victims of bullying, particularly from cases that have become viral, that because of CCTV cameras and all that stuff, so bullying that has made the news, they reach out to these families and they bring the kid to their headquarters in San Diego or in Los Angeles. And for a week or sometimes for 2 weeks, they do, let's say, an intense training, not so much training on how to do an armbar or how to choke someone, mostly on training on how the kid should stand up for himself or herself. Now, if you see these videos, they're perhaps one of the most, for me, emotional things I can see. I almost get teary-eyed when I see them, because you see the transformation of the kid within 1 week, within 2 weeks. And the most important thing is that the kid understands that now you can stand up for yourself. Now, why I find this of some, let's say, philosophical interest to this? Because this is not the approach you get at schools. This is actually one of the most unpopular things you can say in an educational setting, is that the solution to bullying could be, up to a point, to teach a kid to defend itself. And then you say, no, this is definitely not the case, because then basically you are sanctioning bullying or you're fighting violence with violence. And in a way, it's similar to what we hear about rape culture. We hear, don't teach women how not to get raped, how to defend themselves. Teach men not to rape, basically. So the first question is, Mark, so for people who know anything about this, let's say, self-defense community, it's self-evident almost that this is super effective. And the number one beneficiary are the children who are suffering. Why do you think that this obviously good solution faces such a cultural backlash that says, no, this is not the solution, we need to find a solution to the level of the culture or whatever?
Well, once again, they're deferring to a collectivist consensus type of response to any problem. And a child that goes and learns a system of self-defense has, in essence, made themselves completely self-reliant. They don't need the system to come to their aid. They don't need teachers to stand up for them. They don't need this collective ideal response to any situation. They can handle it on their own. And an independent thinking and acting human being is an anathema to anybody who's in the system today.
And again, it's the question then is, do you really want to help the children, or do you want to have an agenda or something? Because having seen the effects of bullying actually from both sides. So there were at least 2 times that someone kicked my ass, and they were so right to do so, because I was basically the bully. This is the number one thing that makes a bully keep away. Like, if you understand that someone can assert themselves, or even worse, that they can beat you, then very quickly you leave that person alone. So, and I think one of the reasons why people are skeptical is what I call the Karate Kid fallacy. So what's the story in Karate Kid is that the kids who are learning karate are the biggest bullies, the Cobra Kai Academy kids. But from my experience in different martial arts schools, I don't think I've met a single person in a martial arts school that even came close to that. So whether it is kickboxing, which has this aggressive element, or whether it's Krav Maga or Jiu-Jitsu, which are way more defensive, let's say, oriented, you always see people who are self-disciplined, and these are the people who are less willing in a way to fight, less willing to be aggressive. So I think this is a huge misunderstanding that says that if you teach kids martial arts, they're going to become more aggressive. And again, this is definitely not the case.
Well, I think most martial arts come also with a system of thought, right? They come with an idea of the way the human being should interact with his fellow man. Not all martial arts. I mean, I've been to a billion boxing gyms where, it's hardcore. There's a lot of meanness in there. There's a lot of ego in a bad way. And where people beat the crap out of you if you don't know what you're doing. And so it certainly depends on the martial art. It's certainly an art like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I think, attracts a certain type of person as well, right? I mean, a type of person who tends to be a little bit more cerebral, since it's a strategic way of all fighting is strategic, really. But this especially seems to be focused on a form of chess where you set up your next moves, and a sort of sensitivity to the other person, because you have to really feel and react to the things that they're doing. And so I've never really met a bad person in a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu dojo. I've met some jerk-offs in Taekwondo dojangs and in boxing gyms who are in it for the wrong reasons, because those types of martial arts also have a certain degree of flash element to them that, attracts people for those aesthetic reasons and because it makes them look kind of cool. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is very understated, right? And I think that has an effect on your demeanor and on your approach to other people.
Yeah, and when it comes to the issue of being, let's say, fight capable, I've always trying to think, how can this be related to the virtues in objectivism? And how can it be relating to you being someone who's after values? So, and there are two reasons why I was thinking about it. First, it's quite distinctive how Randian heroes have this capacity. So if you remember that scene from Atlas Shrugged when Hank Reardon's having this fight with Francisco, and Francisco is holding the table so as not to attack back Reardon, when there's this misunderstanding between them, and Dagny says she knew that Reardon's life hung on the balance, that basically Francisco could kill him with his hands if he didn't restrain himself. Or, not to give spoiler, in one scene towards the end where the men of the good men basically save their friends, and by doing so they saw a very good fighting capacity. And also in other Random novels. So this idea of being capable to stand up for yourself and stand up and being capable to defend in a way your values. So that's how I see self-defense. So you have the virtues and your values on one side, but at the same time, we live in a world where it's not self-evident that someone else is going to come and help you to defend these values. So this is how I see, let's say, being able to defend yourself, that you take your values so seriously in some way that you want to make sure that you can protect them. And again, this is not an objectivist view. This is just me thinking out loud. And actually, I have objectivist friends who are telling me this is a completely wrong way to go through life. Basically, if terrorists attack you, or if, I don't know, jihadis or people who hate you attack you, you're not going to be able to face them with Jiu-Jitsu or with Krav Maga. So basically, what you're having is a malevolent universe premise where all the time you prepare for the wars. So do you think there's any link between being very passionate about learning to defend yourselves and being someone who is passionate about these values and the role of the mind in one's life, and not being a meathead, basically, as they say?
I do. I mean, when you're learning to defend yourself, you're saying I am worth defending. Your primary value is you and your life, and so you are working towards preserving those things, which I think it's essential. It takes self-esteem to defend yourself, and there's lots of people who have had their self-esteem diminished through the institutions that dominate our culture to such a degree that they don't think that fighting back is really sufficient anymore. I also think that the martial arts lifestyle is conducive to the pursuit of values. It's about your body being in shape, flexible and responsive to the world, responsive to your needs. It's about eating properly and thinking properly, and it's about interacting with other people in a proper, respectful way, not only respectful to yourself, but to other people. That in itself are a series of values that you want to pursue. So I can see someone's perspective, that malevolent universe sort of attitude can make you feel paranoid, and you're in a constant state of yellow alert, and you have to you take classes to try to overcome that paranoia, or give you a sense of safety that you can't really ever have, because it's your own outlook on life. But I think that's a different issue. There are realities out there. The realities are that we live in a world that is becoming increasingly irrational. And as a rational person, you have an obligation to yourself and to your values to be able to protect those things against those elements. And philosophically, we do it by preparing arguments to confront the arguments of the other side. And physically, we should do it to protect ourselves from the nuts that are out there who, would think nothing about imposing their will on us, or hurting us, or killing us, because they don't care. And those people are real. It's not an imaginary thing. These people exist, and in greater and greater quantities. Didn't everybody see what was happening in so many of the cities over the past year? Lots of people are becoming nihilistic and violent. You might as well be one who can defend yourself against that stuff, because it's there.
And actually, you mentioned that it's getting worse. And there was one scene last summer from the riots that for me was the most powerful thing that stayed in my mind. So after many nights of looting, MMA fighter John Jones was one night outside, and there were some kids that were doing like vandalizing stuff. And John Jones walks to them and he tells them something like 3 words, like, "That's enough, give me that spray." They were vandalizing some windows. And he didn't tell them, "I'm John Jones, the MMA fighter who can destroy you in 5 seconds. They didn't recognize him, but he had this aura. He had this aura that I can carry myself and do as I tell you, because I'm telling you you are doing wrong, and I'm not happy with that." And it was the kids immediately said, "Oh, okay, sorry." So it was as if for the first time they came across someone who not only stood up for himself, but someone who told them, "Look, you're wrong and I'm right." So they came in front of someone with authority, and immediately they responded to that authority. And that was so powerful. So if people go to YouTube and put John Jones riots, you're going to see that scene. And I think it's very powerful. And
look, I don't want to reduce human beings to other biological entities, but in Africa they discovered there are these dead rhinoceroses all over the place, and these rangers didn't understand how this was happening. They soon discovered that there are rogue adolescent male elephants roaming the savannas, and that would attack these rhinoceroses. What was the solution? They put a big bull elephant in the same territory, and that bull elephant put the smack down on the adolescents, and the adolescents stopped killing things around them, stopped their insanity. So in essence, John Jones acted as that alpha, that everybody seems to hate today. Everybody says it's toxic. No, it isn't. It's the guy who walks up to those 5 young men and says, "Stop this, it's bad." And he delivers in his voice or in his body language such confidence that you're gonna move on. You're gonna drop your violence at your feet and go on and do something better.
Exactly. The most exciting thing in that video, the most captivating thing, is he doesn't pose any threat. He doesn't carry a gun. He doesn't tell them who he is. He's just carrying himself with an aura. And this reminded me of the novel Sane, that where Sane, wherever he shows up, he never threatens. He never does this thing. No, by him being capable of force and being capable of having the capacity to defend himself and having this aura of skill with violence, people immediately get the message, this is someone I shouldn't mess up with. And at the very end of the day, it's an issue of justice. In a way, I like it when the bullied child learns to put someone on a submission or something, or on a choke, because justice triumphs. And there's this also archetypical story that the bullied kid, the hero, goes to the forest and then comes out of the forest being a completely different person and being a hero. So Georges St. Pierre, for example, one of the most famous MMA fighters, his journey started like that. He was bullied at school, and then he went to learn karate, which back then was considered, the most efficient martial art. And that's how he became who he is. And I don't want to appeal to authority, but even Leonard Peikoff in one of his podcasts, someone asks, what are the main things that a kid needs to learn? And he says something like maths, language, history. And he also throws, and also he needs to learn karate. Of course, again, this was like the 90s. He probably thought that karate is the biggest thing in self-defense. Okay, today we know it's not karate, but there's something there.
Indeed. There's also a video that went viral for a while. It was a cop who broke up a fight on the beaches of Fort Lauderdale, I think, during spring break. Okay, so these two young bucks are fighting, and this cop he looks like Robocop. He's massive. He's huge. He's got these crazy, wraparound sunglasses, and the kid is giving him guff. Bang! He puts him right on the ground without even talking. Holds him there and starts calling in backup. Another guy comes in. He, boom, puts him on the ground. He's holding two people and still calling backup. Now, because he's manhandling these guys, like every time they try to fight him, he just manhandles them with one hand, calling all the, sometimes calling and saying, there's a whole crowd of drunk guys around him and girls, and they're closing in. And all he does is go, back off. And they back off. A whole crowd could have jumped on him and made this an incident like we've been seeing over the last year and a half. But not a single one would, because they knew if they jumped into that circle, something bad was going to happen to them if he focused his attention on them. There is something to be said for that. Something very, very powerful in that way of being. I'm all for it.
Agreed. So let's finish. Oh, and since you mentioned police officers, one more thing. So the next big project that the Gracie family is embarking is teaching police officers jiu-jitsu. And again, it's so important. People who don't understand think that because that we have seen on video people who have no idea what they're doing, like putting their knee on someone's neck and that person died, they think that that a hold is the most violent thing you can do, which is actually, it's not the case if you know what you're doing. So if you ban police officers from doing like submission techniques, what is the only thing they have left? Banging people with a club or the teaser, or even worse, with a gun. So they have started a campaign where they try to persuade the police authorities in various states and cities to teach officers jiu-jitsu. And the first statistics that they have back is that police officers who know how to use these, let's say, gentle but super effective techniques, there's less violence and there's less injury. So it's not that the police officer who knows martial arts, in particular this kind of martial art, is going to start destroying people. No, in some ways it's better also for the person who is, let's say, submitted by the police officer.
Yeah, I mean, I know this is slightly off our topic, but I think it's important to mention this because people don't quite understand, I don't think. A police officer brings a potentially lethal force to every confrontation they have. Why? Because they have a gun. That means that every confrontation they get into could either be lethal to them or to you. Now, since most of the officers out there are badly trained in these situations where now people are increasingly resisting arrest and increasingly becoming violent during the process where they should be subdued, these people are not trained enough to subdue the people without harming themselves or without jeopardizing their gun and putting themselves in a worse position because they don't have jiu-jitsu. And so they will rely on these other weapons when push comes to shove because they have no other alternatives. That's why I think the Gracies are spot on. They're always spot on. They've been spot on for 30 freaking years. They're amazing. I think every beat cop, any cop who goes out there in the street should have at least a blue belt in jiu-jitsu. If they have a blue belt, let's see, the one great thing about, not the one great thing, one of the great things about Gracie Jiu-Jitsu is that when you have the intermediate rank of blue belt up to purple, you are very formidable. On a one-on-one fight with somebody who doesn't, who's just normal, you can easily defeat them. With somebody who's a good grappler, purple belts have submitted black belts. I mean, you're very formidable. So it's the chances are highly unlikely that you're going to be put in a position where your gun is compromised or where you're going to have to take that gun out to deal with somebody else. So I think a minimum qualification for a beat cop, blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu.
And also notice that every good self-defense school or jiu-jitsu school with emphasis on self-defense, because some of them, their emphasis is only on the sport, which is still a good, but not as good. All the good schools place emphasis on what happens before a fight, which is de-escalation, camouflage stance, trying to, first of all, how you carry yourself not to appear as a potential victim. So in some ways, a very efficient way not to fight is not to look like someone who's going to be easily a victim when they fight, or not go and do this thing to the face of the other person where they can like head bang you, and that is, keeping distance and all that stuff. So it's not just, you roll and you have these weird techniques. Even if the only thing you learn is how to try to de-escalate or not be seen as a victim, it's very good for you. Okay,
look,
super
really
chat.
quick, quickly, I just want to say that on Facebook, there's a Gracie Breakdown site. I don't know if you could see it, Gracie Breakdowns, and they often take fights and break them down for you, and they will show you how to, if you're on the ground, how to keep somebody at a distance, how you control the distance if somebody's trying to punch and kick you while you're on the ground. Because we've seen many videos with people on the ground getting punched and kicked, and they have no idea how to defend themselves, and they're just getting injured. But you can control that distance if you know what you're doing, just by watching even a simple Gracie Breakdown video. So subscribe to that, get on that on Facebook. That'll help you out a lot, get you interested in that style.
And actually, they have two elements to that. The element is they break out MMA fights where you can understand what happened in the fight. But the most interesting thing, they break down fights where it's like sucker punches or outside of nightclubs. And this is, even if you watch and the only thing you learn is keep distance, don't go face to face with someone. No good thing is going to happen. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the Gracies. Unfortunately, there's no school anywhere near my area. Okay. We have a super chat that says, from Jonathan, using your best estimate, what percentage of the time is England referred to as jolly all England in casual conversation? Well, I don't know. I don't hang out with people who use that term a lot. And no, another super chat. Big Mark fan here. Nikos, not so much, lol.
Man.
It's okay. Well, I know that person loves me, so it's not the person. Someone else asked, what is the productivity hub? Okay, just to clarify something before we finish. The communication bootcamp is live sessions with Don where they're interactive and he gives you feedback on your communication skills, writing, speaking, how you present yourself and all that stuff. That's the Thursday thing. And it happens every Thursday. Once every month on a Sunday, we discuss a book or a system or a person which is related to productivity. And this week we are doing Dale Carnegie's how to okay, oh my God, my mind is stuck. How to win friends and influence people. Yeah. And again, you also get as a member a leaflet with a review of it. Okay, for these things, you have to be a member. Now, yeah, weekly, the communication bootcamp with Don, monthly, the productivity hub, mostly with me. Okay, we're going to Clubhouse. If you have any experiences to share from bullying or from self-defense or how learning to defend yourself changed your life, or if you have any disagreement, if you think we are, how it's called, meatheads or whatever, let us know on Clubhouse. Okay. Thank you very much, Mark. I think that was good stuff, and see you in a bit. Bye-bye.
Bye.